further. We don't know yet what his price will be. Sir Ivor won at 5-4 on, and Tudor Minstrel was beaten at 7-4 on. Well, there's a certainty, and that is that Walter Swinburne is the youngest jockey ever to ride a favourite. Well, he's never been beaten on Shergar, and in his 2 races this season, the nearest anyone's got to him is 10 lengths. He's only been beaten once in his life by poor Belldale Flutter, who's now in a sick room loose box at Newmarket. Sunday Bills, Golden Brigadier, King's General, Sheer Grit and Krug have all finished at least 10 lengths behind this favourite. We know he stays a mile and a half. We know he goes round left-hand bends. His jockey is young, but in my view, a brilliantly promising boy. So it's no surprise that number 18, Shergar, is a red-hot favourite. And there is a very possible danger, the mount of Leicester Piggott. The answer to the perennial annual question, what does Leicester ride? Well, he rides Shotgun for Guy Reed, and the Guy Reed stallion Warpath is responsible. Shotgun would be the first grey since Airborne in 1946, but Leicester's chosen him over the Frenchman Al Nass and Robolino. He only beat Sass narrowly early on, Shotgun, but then ran really well behind Belldale Flutter, with Scintillating Air, Robolino and Calaglow all well behind him. He's sure to get the trip. He's sure to like the ground. Has Leicester chosen the right one? Well, we shall see. Number 19, Shotgun. In front of him there, I think, they're back now to 3, and the Royal Coat Church Parade. Looks really well, this fellow. The Queen's 9th Derby runner. Closest she's ever got was with Oriole, and this is the one who could give Dick Hearn and Willie Carson their hat-trick of Derby wins. But although Church Parade beat Toagori Moo once last year, he was absolutely outclassed behind him in the 2,000 guineas. Maybe he was suffering from the virus, which many of his stable companions have. Dick Hearn's certainly been convinced by his gallop since that it's worth running him, and Dick doesn't make many mistakes. Number 3, Church Parade. And there's the elegant figure of Glint of Gold, and if you can remember Mill Reef, I can tell you this fellow looks exactly like him, only at least one size, maybe a size and a half bigger. Unfortunately, Glint of Gold, whom John Mathias has chosen in preference to Robolino, doesn't have Mill Reef's acceleration. If he had, well, Shergar would have to watch out. But he won the Italian Derby well. He won the Warren Stakes over this course and distance, and he beat his stable companion Robolino so comfortably in a gallop that John Mathias chose Glint of Gold. I wouldn't be a bit surprised if he's right, at least to the extent that Glint of Gold's my idea of the best each-way bet. Number 5, Glint of Gold. And there's the one who might prove John Mathias wrong. Robolino would certainly have been the stable first string on 2-year-old form, and indeed when he only just lost the blue ribbon over this course earlier this season. But since then, he failed at York in the Mercadante. Possibly the going was to blame that day. Admittedly, he had Calaglow behind him, but he also failed in a full-distance gallop at Kingsclear that convinced Ian Balding and John Mathias that Glint of Gold would get the trip better. Well, here's the fellow that could just possibly prove them wrong, particularly if the ground isn't too sticky for him. Number 14, Robolino. Well, now there's a colt who's only got one blot on his record, Calaglow, and that blot, of course, was in the Mercadante, and Guy Harwood, his trainer, blames it exclusively on the sticky going at York. Well, if he's right, and of course if Calaglow hadn't run at York, well, he would almost be disputing favourite with Shergar. He was never beaten last year, and he looked enormously impressive when he made his reappearance at Newmarket. But, for my liking, he collapsed too quickly and too early in that York race for the going entirely to be to blame. I had thought that Greville Starkey might come over to the stand side on Calaglow, but we learn now that that's not very likely. Nevertheless, if the ground's not too sticky for this fellow, and if the sticky ground was the excuse at York, well then, this is a very real danger to them all. Calaglow. And there's number 1, Al Naz, one of the 2 French runners, and a really good-looking colt, although some French judges think that his shoulder makes it no certainty that he'll come down the hill. But he's the only unbeaten colt in the field. Like the other French runner, Lydian, he's by Lifar, who certainly didn't come round Tattenham Corner. But Al Naz has never been beaten. He won his only race as a 2-year-old, but in his second victory as a 3-year-old, he was watched by Lester Piggott, and when Lester was invited to ride him, he declined the invitation. Well, even Lester makes mistakes, and this is the fellow who could prove him wrong today. The mount of Alfred Gibert, number 1, Al Naz. And there's the other one from France, Lydian, the mount of Freddie Head. Well, Freddie, 5 times champion in France, but it's an awful long time, 1974 in fact, since he last rode a winner in England. And he's had some unhappy experiences, which he bears with cheerful humour here at Epsom. One day he says, I'll come around that something corner and surprise you all. Well, Lydian's form doesn't really suggest that he's the one for Freddie to do it on, but Freddie rides him for his charming sister, Cricket Head. Lydian's beautifully bred. He got his last race on an objection, and an objection because the winner had some drugs in his system. But Lydian had run well. The distance ought to suit him, and I wouldn't be all that surprised if he could carry Freddie into the shake-up at least. Number 11, Lydian. Now then, a fine big horse, Riboretto, and one who's certain to get the trip. He's the only 3-year-old in Ron Boss's yard, this fellow, because one of Ron's Arab owners took about 20 horses away when he, no fault of his, but anyway, that left Riboretto the only 3-year-old. But Ron is full of confidence that Riboretto will be thereabouts, and he got the trip extremely well in the Lingfield trial, made nearly all the running, so you'd expect him to be up there today, and stayed on very strongly to beat Sheer Grit. Admittedly, Sheer Grit fooled about a bit, but nevertheless, Riboretto sure to get the trip. The mount of Pat Edry has already won on Grundy and been third 3 times. Number 13, Riboretto. Kind of hush, a bit of a problem this one. He beat Toagori Moo before the Guineas and then was completely outpointed in the Guineas by Toagori Moo. But that might have been due to a cough which Barry Hills has had. Well, what difference will the extra half-mile make? This is the mount of Steve Cawthon, and his trainer Barry Hills is at least confident that he'll run well and confident that he'll get the trip. We can only guess. Number 8, Kind of Hush. King's General, Guy Harwood's second string, and this will be the second time King's General's met Shergar, and he was murdered the first time. I'm afraid he'll be murdered this time too. I can't honestly give him any very great chance, although he did win a race as a 2-year-old. In his 3-year-old form, the second race was at Chester. You couldn't really make him more than a rank outsider. Number 8, King's General. And there's a number 6, Golden Brigadier. Brigadier Gerard still looking for his first Derby winner, but I'm afraid this one of Clive Britton's 2 runners isn't really likely to give him one. He didn't look too happy when he ran at Epsom, and he didn't look too gallant last time when Bill Watts's Oaks Filly Rhinebridge looked too good and too tough for him at Thirsk. Number 6, the mount of Paul Bradwell, who incidentally led up the first winner. Trainer Clive Britton had the very good idea of giving Paul something to do to take his mind off his first ride in the Derby. The best of luck to him. Number 6, Golden Brigadier. And there you see the Queen talking to Willie Carson, and by the look of the gesture of her elegant white glove, showing him how to come round Tattenham Corner. That's Dick Hearn in the top hat. Number 10, Krug. This is a tough colt, and one which everybody would love to see win, because his luckless trainer Michael Jarvis ought now to be just about to saddle Belldale Flutter with a real winning chance. Of course, Belldale Flutter, poor fellow, is in a sick room, but Krug will certainly get the trip. He ran well behind Riboretto in the Derby trial, but he did finish 4th to him and Sheer Grit, and so he too is a maiden, and it's a very, very long time since a maiden last won the... No, I beg your pardon, he's not a maiden. He did win a race last year, a 1.25 miles. I'm wronging him. Nevertheless, I'm afraid he's an outsider, but one who everybody would be delighted to see win, and since he's by Relco, a Derby winner himself, he's sure to get the trip. Number 10, Krug. 15 is Sass, and another, well, Paul Kellaway would be delighted to hear me say that this is a real outsider, because usually when I say that about Paul's horses, they win. But this is another maiden, and it's 94 years since 1-1. Sass hasn't ever won a race, and he was a long way behind Riveretto and the other by Sassafras. John Reed's third ride in the race, but an outsider, number 15, Sass. Clapping there, the Scintillating Air, number 16. Well, Bruce Hobbs, who trains Scintillating Air incredibly, has never won an English Classic. But although this is an outsider, it is a pretty good outsider, I'd say, because in that controversial Mercadante Stakes, he was third behind Belledale Flutter and Shotgun, and not far behind them, well in front of Robolino, Calaglow, and incidentally Centurious. That's Jeff Baxter getting a leg up on Scintillating Air, and although he's by Sparkler, who you wouldn't think was a staying sire, Sparkler has got an Oaks winner, so Scintillating Air will probably get the trip. 16, Scintillating Air. And there's Shergar, who, as I've told you, was second in that Lingfield Derby trial, and has the distinction of having finished closer to Shergar than anybody else, because he was third in the race Shergar was beaten in when Belledale Flutter won it. Shergar wasn't too far behind Shergar. This season, on the other hand, although he messed about a bit in that race at Lingfield, I'd expect Joe Mercer to have him up with the leaders today instead of holding him up as he was at Lingfield. He messed about, otherwise he'd have been closer to the winner, Riveretto. Nevertheless, he's got something to redeem to get back to his 2-year-old form. Number 17, Shergar. And there, number 20, is Silver Season, Clive Britton's second runner, and certainly the more likely of the two, I would say, to get in the shake-up, although he's only won over a mile so far, and his pedigree by Martin Mass out of a mare by Skymaster makes it no certainty whatever that he's likely to get further, or get much further anyway, and he's got to get another half mile. He's often up with the leaders, and wouldn't be any surprise to see him making the running, but the more of the running he makes, the less likely he is to get the trip. Number 20, Silver Season. There's Sunley Bills, 21, another outsider. He was a pretty fair 2-year-old, in fact. He won the Hyperion Stakes and the Houghton at Newmarket, but he's been well beaten in both his races this season. One of those who was a mile behind Shergar in the Chester Vase, and then was well behind Kind of Hush, the day Kind of Hush beat Toagori Moo. Mind you, that was pretty fair form. The sire, Patch, belonged to Mr. Vidadini and was second in the French Derby, but you'd need a pretty optimistic crystal ball, I think, to say that Sunley Bills is likely to go one better in the English version. And there's the real outsider of them all, Waverley Hall, who's only ever had one race for Rod Simpson, and was unplaced. In fact, he finished 12th in that. But Rod and the sporting owner, Mr. George Zandona, are determined to have a nice day out here at the Derby, and Rod says that Waverley Hall won't get in anybody's way. I should think he may be among the favourites to finish last, but who knows? You could be wrong. Maybe he'll improve on his previous form. There he is then, Bryn Crossley, having his first mount ever. In fact, he's never even been to a Derby before, having his first mount on number 22, Waverley Hall. And there's the Queen and the senior Epsom steward, Mr. Tom Blackwell, walking back towards the paddock, past an admiring crowd along the rails. She's not exactly on the course, but well, on where they pull up, or rather they pull up over to the left beyond her. And now, as they circle, getting into the right order for the parade, and I'm going to identify them all for you individually in the parade so that you'll get to know the numbers. But now, possibly more important, let's have a look at the prices.
And Shergar now the 5-4 on favourite, Shotgun 8-1, Glint of Gold and Carla Glow both at 12-1, Al Nas at 20-1 from 16s, Church Parade 22-1 from 20s, Riveretto 25-1 from 20s, Robolino is 28-1 from 25-1, and Shergar has gone out to 33-1 from 25s, having opened up at 20-1. Kind of Harsh steady at 33-1. Lydion is now 50-1 from 33s, and Krug has gone back to 50-1 from 33-1. Scintillating Air also at 50s. King's General, Silver Season, Sunley Bills and Golden Brigadier all 100-1. Sass is 200-1 from 100, and Waverley Hall 500 to 1. They're all quoted.
Well, it looks as though Shergar, who you see there, very cool as always. It looks as though he may start just about the same price as Saraiva. Talking of Shergar being cool, which we expected, I'm glad to say that there's practically nothing in the field, in fact nothing, that's got seriously upset so far. I told you that the Royal Colt Church Parade walked into the paddock on his hind legs, but he soon put the front ones down and hasn't behaved at all badly. I know that Clive Britton was worried about Riboretto. I beg your pardon, Ron Boss was worried about Riboretto, but there's been no sign yet that, touch wood, that Riboretto's temperament will upset him. But of course we've got the long parade to come, and then the long walk back across the downs, so there's still time for them to get a fit of nerves, but we haven't seen any sign of it yet. There's Shergar going out, and here they come now up the course towards the grandstand, giving everybody a good view of them, and in a moment we'll go through the whole field one by one to give you a real good look at the colours. Don't worry about the colours of the leader, because that's a copper. But behind him is number one. I think we probably can start looking at them now. That is number one, Al Naz, ridden by 35-year-old Alfred Gibert, who's been third and fourth. He was third on Irish Ball and fourth on Pajama Hunt. The colours, as you see, have a big red disc on the front. Behind him, in the royal colours, Willie Carson on Church Parade. Willie seeking a hat-trick. This is his 13th ride, but he's won the last two derbies. There's John Matthias on Glint of Gold, in the Mill Reef colours. Paul Bradwell on Golden Brigadier, Paul having his first ride. Rebel Starkey on Colour Glow. Steve Cawthon in the stripes on Kind of Hush. Brian Taylor in the chevron hoop on King's General. Bruce Raymond in the very light colours on Krug. And then all red colours, been worn by Freddie Head on Lydian. Riboretto, Pat Edery with the epaulettes. Robelino, Paul Cook with the cross belts. John Reed has spots, as you see there. Jeff Baxter on Scintillating Air has a check cap. Well-known colours of Captain Lemos, worn by Joe Mercer on Sheer Grit. Here's the favourite, with the darker epaulettes on a green jacket. Leicester in easily recognisable checks of Guy Reed. Ernie Johnson in stripes. Philip Waldron on Sundley builds in a chevron. And then the last, and just conceivably the least, Bryn Crossley on number 22, Waverley Hall. They come then, and still there's no sign of anybody showing too much excitement or getting on their nerves, or indeed really breaking out into a serious sweat. Bruff has just passed me a message to say that number 9, King's General, is a slight exception to what I've been saying, so let's have a look. Well, there's no sweat on his quarters, but Bruff's quite right. He is breaking out a little bit. As you see, that's Brian Taylor riding him, incidentally. Brian was riding in his 13th derby. I hope he's not superstitious. But King's General, yes, has just broken out. But compared to some of the sights we've seen in the derby, I didn't see the great Fairway, who was mobbed by the crowd when he came out of the paddock and ended up in such a state of nerves that he didn't show anything like his real form. But nevertheless, there have been some cases of horses whose nerves did betray them, and I don't think you could say that King's General is one of them, and he's the worst case that we've seen so far, anyway, in this field. Church Parade, the Royal Colt, has certainly calmed down nicely, and in a moment we shall see him turn and canter down. As you can see, they parade a good long way down. There's Church Parade. Al Naz in front of him. Church Parade doesn't look to me to have a bead of sweat on his coat, and there he goes, setting off into a nice steady canter, pricking his ears, as you can see, to the noise of the crowd. The royal colours going past Al Naz, and moving really nicely on this perfect ground. At least, certainly, if you were riding a steeplechaser on it, you'd call it perfect ground. Some of these flat race purists may consider it a bit soft. There goes Church Parade. And now we'll see one or two more cantering down. Can't see what that is, I'm afraid. You can get a little bit closer to them, I'll be able to recognize them better. And there's the favourite, still ice cool, and we've heard an awful lot about Walter Swinburne's temperament. You can see how easy he's going to be to recognize with that big white blaze. And don't worry about his tongue lolling out, because that's happened in both his races this season, and since he won those races by 10 lengths and 12, it doesn't make much difference to him. As you can see, he's not an absolutely extravagant mover, but he's got a short, economical action, and he may not take enormously long strides, but when he gets going, he takes an awful lot compared with others. Shergar going to the post with an awful lot of money resting between his ears. Another lovely new shot we've got now as they canter down into the paddock. You can see what a nasty place it is to be riding something that takes a real hold. But although Shergar pulls very hard at home when he's cantering sometimes, Walter Swinburne says he's a beautiful ride in a race. You can put him where you want him, and as you can see, he's pulled up very, very coolly there as they gather under the shade. Beautiful scene, isn't it? In a moment they'll be going through the road, where I sincerely hope there'll be a policeman directing the traffic, and I'm sure there will, getting them across the road and onto the long down and up alleyway, which goes down across the downs and up to the Derby start. I hope you can now recognize most of the colours. Leicester there in the checks, Waverley Hall in the stars, Golden Brigade in the striped sleeves with a white cap. But in fact, Scintillating Air is leading them out. No, he's not. I beg your pardon. Riboretto is leading them out. And Scintillating Air behind him. Then comes John Reed in the spots on Sass. Alfred Gibert on Al Naz. Glint of Gold coming now. Now, I believe yes, we've got some up-to-the-minute news from our good old Harrovian customer in the betting ring, John McCrick. Let's join him.
Here in the ring, there's only two horses being backed. Shergar, little bits of 11 to 10, then evens. I saw a 6,000 to 5,000 go on in one hand, an 11,000 to 10,000 bet. The question is, will he start at odds on? At the moment, it looks so, and the offices are shoveling money back for Shotgun. Lester Pickett's mount, he's obviously been popular in all the betting shops. He's the horse that's been backed by the offices, though not so much by people on the course. Of the other horse in the race, Al Nasser, bits and pieces of 20 to 1 I've seen for him. Church Parade, surprisingly, he's drifting from 20 to 25 to 1. Glint of Gold's a drifter, people don't fancy him. There was a £5,000 bet at 12 to 1 on Carla Glow. Some fancy for that horse. Robolino, completely unfancied, he's out to 33 to 1 in some books. But all the way, the money is for Shergar. Bookmakers trying to hold the line for Shergar. He's odds on still. I don't think he's going to go back to even money. You heard the cheers as Walter Swinburne took him past the stands. That was punters cheering what they think is a certain winner of the Derby. The bookmakers, all they can do is pray that he now gets beaten.
Well, there's Glint of Gold. They say they don't fancy Glint of Gold. Well, I jolly well do. I wish I was near some one of those bookmakers who don't fancy him in order to have a bit each way on him. And incidentally, talking of big bets, I've heard of two bets of 40,000 quid each at even money on Shergar in Ladbrokes betting shop at Mill Hill. And I think Bruff's got some betting news too.
No, this isn't betting news, John, but this is the human news, which I know you like too, because at this moment, as the jockeys come up towards the start, it means an enormous amount to anyone who's backed the horses, of course, even more to trainers and to owners, but particularly to the lads who do the horses. And the nice story about the lads who do the leading animals here, because the lad who does Shergar, and I see the French horse Al Nass on his toes there, the lad who does Shergar, Dickie McCabe, and the lad who does Mick Weedy, who does Glint of Gold, both stable lads boxing champions. So I dread to think what happens if one of them wins and is disqualified in favour of the other. They both could certainly look after themselves well. And in fact, Mick Weedy has a glint of Mick inscribed in his broom handle. And also a nice piece of news, Glint of Gold there on the left with his white noseband. And other lad that is worth remembering, Colin Bister, does Church Parade, the Queen's colt, and his wife Betty did the Queen's filly Highclere, who of course won the French Oaks, and therefore has a very strong family connection with this. Church Parade, the Queen's colt, gone out to 25 though from 22 to 1, but he still has got great ability. If things could click for him, he still could run very well indeed. Back to John.
I believe that Calaglow, yes, you see Calaglow's lad is leading him down there. This colt has been known to get very much on his toes before a race. In fact, before he failed in the Mecca Dante, he was actually taken in a horse box across from the racecourse stables to the saddling boxes. As you can see, he is pretty much on his toes, but he's got his own lad there to keep him quiet. His own lad is called Tony, I know, I'm not sure of his Christian name. Oh, it's Tony Clark, the good apprentice, in fact. It's Tony Clark. Yes, I'm sorry, I'd forgotten that. Now, well, there's Glint of Gold. We heard that the bookies don't seem to fancy him, but let's hear what John Mathias thinks about his chance.
Glint of Gold, nice sort of horse. He's run over the Derby distance and the track. He's won the Warren Stakes here. He's been working very well in the race. I'd like to be in first 7 or 8 and handy, maybe 4th, 5th, tapping the corner.
Well, I would like to see him pretty close, certainly at Tattenham Corner, because I'm sure that Shergar will be close up there, and not very long after Tattenham Corner. I suspect that Shergar will set sail, so that I wouldn't want Glint of Gold to be too far behind him. Well, Joe Mercer's had one fewer rides in the Derby than Lester Piggott. This is Joe's 28th ride and Lester's 29th. Joe, on the other hand, has never won it, although he's been placed 3 times. We asked him about what he thought of Shergrit.
Shergrit, he's a nice horse. He's well bred. He's busted. I rode him last year at Campton and won on him, his second run. I think I'm very pleased, to get the riding today. He's a well-balanced horse, and I think he can go around here like a ball.
Let's hope he's right. He certainly looks really well, Shergrit, and hasn't got at all upset. In fact, he, like many of the others, would still be dry as a bone. Well, he won't be shortly, because although it's a lovely breezy day, it's still quite hot enough to make you sweat if you have to run 1.5 miles round Epsom. Well, Steve Cawthon spoke to us earlier about Kind of Hush.
Well, Kind of Hush is my 3rd ride in the Derby, and I should think probably he'll give me the best ride that I've had around here, hopefully. A very nice horse he is, and he beat Tilgore Moo on his first start of this year, and then ran in the Guineas, which I think was a bit short for him and a bit too soon. I think if the ground is good, it will be to my advantage, and I think he's got it squeak.
Got a squeak. Well, Steve won the Triple Crown on Affirmed when he was 18, younger than Walter Swinburne, so he knows a little bit of what Walter must be feeling now. Good luck to the Kentucky kid on Kind of Hush. And there in the all-red colours, very rare that you see all-one colours nowadays in this country, there is Freddie Head, and I certainly would like to wish him good luck, because I've often been very rude about him when he's been riding in England. He's a real good jockey in France. He's just been unlucky over here. Let's see what he says about Lydian.
Well, I'm on a horse called Lydian, and Lydian was a very backward horse, and he's improved a lot this year. He's won a good race in France, a Group 2 race, and I think he should run well today, and we'll see. I think I'm going to wait a little bit with him in the early part of the race and try and finish well, because the horse is not sure to stay. He's not bred to stay, really, and so I want to be off the pace for the first part.
Well, Freddie certainly ought to know about Lydian's incident. Lydian, he calls him, much better pronunciation than mine. He certainly ought to know about his pedigree because, of course, he rode Lifar, who has become one of the most fashionable and sought-after stallions in the world, despite the fact that when he came to Epsom, he behaved like a motor car on black ice. But I hope that, sincerely hope, that Lydian will give Freddie a real good ride today. And, well, now then, there with the stars is Bryn Crossley, who, as I told you, is having his very first ride in the Derby. Let's hear his impressions of that experience.
It's the atmosphere is really terrific. I was riding work on the track this morning at 5:30, and there was cars coming then. And I thought, well, this is at 5:30, what's it going to be like at 2:30? It's going to be really packed, and the atmosphere, and now the atmosphere is absolutely terrific, and that's what I'm here for, just to enjoy the atmosphere and just have a good ride round.
Well, let's hope he does have an enjoyable ride. As you can see, Waverley Hall has begun to sweat up a little bit, but he's certainly never known anything like this. In fact, he's only ever had one run in his whole life before. Well, Waverley Hall, maybe he'll prove us all wrong and not finish anywhere near last. Hope so for Bryn Crossley's sake, but I also hope that he lives up to his trainer's words and doesn't get in anybody's way. Of course, there's always the danger in the Derby that some horses really are beaten when they get halfway down Tattenham Hill. And if you are trying to come from behind, as for instance Freddie Head is on Lydian, then you have a lot of floating landmines coming back in your path if you're not very careful. There's Paul Cook on Robolino. Well, before he chose to come over on One Fleet Street, we asked Paul about what his tactics were likely to be on Robolino.
After we jump off, everything has to work out for itself to start with, and just the first part of the race, there is a little bit of necking going up to the first right-hand bend, because low numbers do try to get themselves sorted out, and they push over a little bit, but with the pace on, I should think everything will sort itself out after the first furlong and a half. With Shergar perhaps at the moment out the race, it will be a very close thing between the rest of us.
Shergar, you see, now is just odds on, 10 to 11, 11 to 10 on, so he's not quite as short a price favourite as Survival was, who was 5 to 4 on favourite when he won. Well, I don't believe that change will stop Shergar. The very best of luck to Walter Swinburne and to the favourite, and indeed to all of them. And with 4 left to go in, hand over to Graham Good, who is also having his first Derby.
And there you can see Lydian proving just a little bit of a handful down at the start. Lydian, Freddie Head in the all-red colours. And El Nas, the other French horse, just going in. Shotgun now 15 to 2 from 8 to 1. The one wheeling round in the pale colours is Golden Brigadier. There's the favourite Shergar going in. Krug on the far side of him, the one nearest to us, is Sunday Builds, then Kind of Hush. Lester Piggott you can see already in, standing up on the running rail, looking round to see just how many more there are to go in, and he sees that El Nas is proving a bit of a handful. Then just behind El Nas, Golden Brigadier with the striped sleeves. That one has to go in amongst the back markers. Silver Season, that one's just going in, but Lydian is the one that's causing the problem down at the start. El Nas just on the far side of him. These are the two runners that are holding up the start for the 202nd Derby. Golden Brigadier has gone in. This is Lydian just going in. El Nas you can spot just to the right of the picture. He's to go in. And then the runners will be installed. Lydian you can see backing out again. This French horse, ridden by Freddie Head, bred by Robert Sangster, is proving just a bit of a handful. You see his tail is swishing round here. The other French runner, El Nas, just going out to the left, but this is Lydian, this is Freddie Head, and this is the one that's causing the problem down at the start. Lydian. Freddie Head had one or two anxious rides here in earlier derbies, and he is the one that's holding the delay at the start. You can see all the other 18 quality colts in the stalls, and fortunately nobody is misbehaving at this stage. The only one we're waiting for is Lydian. El Nas now on the far side in. Right on the very far side you can spot the noseband of Robolino on the extreme left of the picture. Lester Piggott looking round anxiously. Jeff Baxter, I can see, looking round anxiously on Scintillating Air. Riveretto is in. Shergar, very, very calm indeed. Shergar in his stall number 6. Lydian just going in now, being offered up. And we heard the score there. 1 to go, and it's Lydian. He is hanging out the back, and this is the one that's causing the problem down at the start. You saw that he had the blindfold on. That proved to be absolutely useless. You can see all the stall handlers trying to get him in, and he's not going in at all. Depends how much you heard him say. Take him away. Looks as if they're going to go without him. They're under orders and they're off. Lydian is a non-runner. Waverley Hall was slowly away and on the inside. It suddenly builds, and in fact it's Riveretto that goes on. Riveretto in the lead from Suddenly Builds in second place, and just in behind these on the outside comes Silver Season. Then comes El Nas, and behind El Nas is Shergar racing prominently. The back marker is Waverley Hall. Robolino is also towards the rear. And as they settle down, running through the first 2 furlongs, it suddenly builds on the outside of Riveretto. Then Shergar going well in the left of the picture. Then just in behind that one is Waverley Hall. That's the back marker. That's the one that's already making some way adrift. They continue their stiff uphill climb, and it's Riveretto in the lead from Silver Season in second. Then Suddenly Builds is third, and Shergar is 4. Then Al Nas is 5, and Church Parade 6, and Shotgun going sweetly in 7th place just in behind them. But it's Riveretto in the lead as they continue the uphill climb. Riveretto the leader from Silver Season up on the outside. Shergar is third, then Suddenly Builds is 4. Church Parade is 5. The Grey Shotgun in 6th place. Then behind Shotgun is Krug, and behind Krug comes Sheargrit making up a bit of ground. El Nas up on the outside. These are tracked by Glint of Gold. And as they begin these descent at the top of the hill, coming down to the halfway stage, and it's Riveretto in the lead. Riveretto the leader from Silver Season in second. Shergar spotted his white face there in third, the grey. Lester Piggott going well in 4, then Church Parade 5. Scintillating Area 6 and Sheargrit 7. Then comes King's General 8, Glint of Gold 9 and Suddenly Build 10. Then comes Al Nas with Robolino making up ground upon the outside. But it's still Riveretto that leads as they begin the descent to Tatton Corner. It's Riveretto in the lead from Suddenly Build. Shergar there on the left of the picture up on the outside. Then Scintillating Air just in behind them. And behind Scintillating Air is Church Parade. Then comes Shotgun. Then comes King's General in the field, well and truly strung out as they swing into the home straight and coming round Tatton Corner, and the white face of Shergar moves up to dispute the lead with Riveretto. Shergar, Riveretto from Silver Season and Scintillating Air. Then behind these comes Shotgun, and Walter Swinburne is committed. He's going for home, and Shergar is going on and going clear. The odds-on favourite clear in the Derby with just over 2 furlongs left to go. It's Shergar in the lead and clear from Silver Season. Lester Piggott coming very wide on Shotgun, but they've got 2 furlongs left to race, under 2 furlongs to go, and it's Shergar in the lead. Shergar from Scintillating Air in second place. Church Parade is third, Shotgun 4. Then comes Glint of Gold, but Shergar is well clear with a furlong to go. Shergar a long, long way clear of his rivals. Shergar in the lead and clear. Walter Swinburne riding him out, going for home ahead of Glint of Gold is second. Scintillating Air is third, Shotgun is 4. But coming up to the line, Shergar is going to win him at the line. Shergar is the winner, very easy winner. Glint of Gold second, Scintillating Air third, Shotgun 4. Church Parade 5, then Sheargrit 6, and Scintillating, and then behind that one came Robolino, and the last horses include Golden Brigadier, Kind of Hush, El Nas, and the last horse to pass the post is in fact Waverley Hall. And so the outcome of this, the 202nd Derby, is a win for number 18 Shergar, owned by His Highness the Aga Khan, trained at Newmarket by Michael Stout, who's 4th runner in the race, ridden by Walter Swinburne, the 19-year-old jockey, and bred by the Aga Khan. Second was number 5, Glint of Gold, owned by Mr. Paul Menon, trained at Kingsclear by Ian Balding and ridden by John Matthias and trained by Paul Menon. The third horse home, number 16, Scintillating Air, owned by Mr. K.C. Dodson, trained at Newmarket by Bruce Hobbs, ridden by Jeff Baxter and bred by the Perney House stud. And the fourth horse home, number 19, Shotgun, owned by Mr. Guy Reed, trained at Middleham by Chris Thornton and ridden by Lester Piggott. Lester Piggott finishes 4th, but there's our winner. There's Shergar, and a brilliant ride by young Walter Swinburne, the ice-cool rider of Shergar. Sir Ivor was the last odds-on favourite to win this race, and Sir Ivor won it in 1968 when ridden by Lester Piggott. But there you can see Shergar the authority with which this horse won, and there Walter Swinburne being congratulated by the jockey on the third horse home, Scintillating Air. That's the third horse home, and the jockey Jeff Baxter there just shaking hands with the jockey that finished second. That was John Mathias on Glint of Gold. Well, John, that race was won with authority and command. John, your opinions?
It's been the most marvellously predictable derby that I've ever seen, because from the moment Walter took his position third at the top of the hill, you could always easily imagine what was going to happen, because it's exactly what's happened in his other two races this season.
What was it like
He
out there?
sat just
Well, I was just a passenger on a very good horse.
You were always cantering.
Yes.
Was it easier than you thought it would be? Well, as you can see, we're now trotting. He's saying he's just a passenger. Here's Michael Stout in front. Michael, many, many congratulations.
Thank you very
well
much.
done.
Thank you very
What
much.
was it like from the stand?
Well, a great thrill. Great thrill.
You were very, very cool, but were you upset before the race, butterflies, things like that?
No, we kept nice and cool, and he was always in a lovely position, and one didn't have too many worries.
How good is he, Michael?
Very good.
Very good. Longest distance winner for a very long time.
Yeah.
Yes. He said he was going so easy all the way. Hey? And here we're passing Shotgun, the second favourite, the Yorkshire horse. And there's a great crowd of people, as you can see. Number 18, the winner. And we're waiting for His Highness, the Aga Khan, to come out. 19 years of age. And there's a great big smile on his face. Not very easy to get to him. Let's just have a quick word, if we can, with the stable lad. Well done, stable lad.
Thank you very much.
What's your name?
Dickie McCabe.
Well done, Dickie.
Just put the lead ring. I'm sure that somebody will like to lead him.
Yes, Michael's just saying that His Highness the Aga Khan will be coming out to lead the horse in. Where does he go to the Arc de Triomphe at all, Michael?
Oh, we don't know yet. I would think the Irish Derby, you know.
Yeah.
And then we'll play it from there.
Well trained. Well done.
Thank you very much.
So we leave the winner as now he walks to the coveted spot, the winner's enclosure of the Epsom Derby.
Hold on, Wally.
Well, they're both still remarkably cool, but how wonderful Walter must be feeling, because however cool he is by nature, the butterflies must have been fluttering there on the way down to the start, and he couldn't know that the race was going to go so exactly according to plan, except of course that he's said before that riding Shergar feels like riding Pegasus. Well, this afternoon he didn't need wings. All he needed was his own four legs, and how brilliantly they served him. Those who worried about his ability to come down the hill came down the hill and round the corner as if Sterling Moss was driving. And there's Wally coming into the hallowed position which every flat race jockey yearns for, and getting the ovation he richly deserves. 19 years old, and I wonder how many times he'll be back in the Derby winner's enclosure. There it. 10 lengths we hear. 10 lengths, so he's beaten Troy in that respect at least, further than Troy, and he's kept up his own record of never winning as a 3-year-old by less than double figures. There's the Aga Khan and his wife in the smart blue hat and a sort of jabot, I think they call it, in front of her neck. How delighted the Aga must feel. And if I don't know where his grandfather is, what particular part of Valhalla he's inhabiting, but he who had 5 Derby winners and for whom the Honourable George Lambton bought Mumtaz Mahal, who is the 5th grandmother or the grandmother in 5 generations removed of Shergar, how delighted and how proud they must be feeling. The Aga, of course, took some time after his father, the Ali Khan's tragic death. For some time, this Aga Khan didn't attempt to follow in his grandfather's footsteps, or only on a very small scale. But now he's one of the world's biggest owners, and with Shergar, maybe one of the most successful. There he is. truly happy man, and I'm now told by historians who know a great deal more than me, no less a historian than Graham Good, that no horse has won by 10 lengths, as much as 10 lengths, in this century. No horse. Well, they used to say Eclipse first and the rest nowhere, and I wouldn't really have been all that surprised if the judge had lost his head and called it a distance today, because it was truthfully Shergar first and the rest nowhere. And look at him, he still hasn't turned a hair. Really wonderfully calm, and to what may he go on? Let's hope and pray that he will be kept in training next season as a 4-year-old, and if he is, and if things go for the rest of this season as they've gone so far, well, I can't see why he shouldn't break every conceivable prize money winning record, certainly in European history, and he might give the Americans a run for their dollars too. Talking of dollars, I hope to heaven he never gets sold across the Atlantic, because what a priceless property he will be at the stud. Well, I would indeed just like to have a look at the second, because he's the son of my great favourite Milreef, and as I told you in the paddock, he looks just like him, only a bit bigger. And although we didn't see the wonderful race he was running, because Shergar had taken the cameras away from him, in fact, Glint of Gold was very badly placed at the top of Tattenham Hill. He was an awful long way back, made some ground down it, but made an awful lot of ground up the straight. He stayed on really well, and well, if this had been a bad derby, I believe that Milreef would now have sired the winners of 5 derbies instead of 4. But it wasn't a bad derby, it was a very, very good one, and Glint of Gold, I think, can be proud, and I'm sure Mr. Paul Mellon, no, that's Ian Balding patting him. I hope and think that Mr. Mellon's over here, but I haven't seen him yet, and he's not actually visible there, so maybe he hasn't been able to come from America. But how proud he must be of Milreef and of this very, very handsome son. And over a longer distance, who knows, maybe Glint of Gold might win the St. Leger. And there's Scintillating Air. Well, Bruce Hobbs still hasn't trained a classic winner, but he, I'm sure, will be proud and pleased with Scintillating Air, who has yet again done his level best, run his heart out, and won his owner a very considerable amount of prize money. And you may have punted your lot on the winner, or the second or the third, I hope so, because here's the SP from John Tyrrell.
Thank you, John. First, number 18, Shergar, the 11-10 on favourite. Second, number 5, Glint of Gold, 13-1. And third, number 16, Scintillating Air at 50-1.
Yep, sure.
A non-runner was number 11, Lydian, withdrawn before coming under orders, and Rule 4 does not apply, 18 ran.
Well, this is a very, very happy moment, and here's the happiest man in England, or 2 happiest men, Walter Swinburne and his father, Wally. Well, father and son. First of all, Walter, how do you feel with all the pressure that's been on you?
Relieved now. I mean, there never was much pressure on me. You know, I had my parents, Mr. and Mrs. Stout, and good owner, good lads in the yard, and that's what counts.
What is the father's instant reaction?
Elated. Elated. I don't know about him being relieved, I'm relieved.
And it looks an absolutely devastating performance to watch, Walter, because you were always in such total command of everybody.
Yes, I mean, the horse did what I thought he would do. No problem, early speed, quickened up, and I mean, he was idling with me about a furlong and a half down, so
well, we can look at those extraordinary closing stages, really, because for a derby that was won so... This is before Tattenham Corner, isn't it? You're just straightening up, I think, here,
yeah.
And you're actually taking a pull. Did you, I mean, everyone beside you was rowing away. Did you think there could possibly be any danger?
Well, I was always wary for something coming, you know. That's why I gave him a crack. I mean.
And now it's a long, long way home there. You're fully 2 furlongs out in the Epsom Derby. What was your attitude? Go all the way to the line?
Yes, just here he was idling, so I gave him a backhander. You know, I was waiting for something to come. I could hear the crowd shouting Leicester. I thought, oh my God, no.
Because, I mean, you give him a crack here. Yeah. And, I mean, how far did it seem? You were sort of furlong out here.
Yeah, I mean, I had a look there and I couldn't believe it, you know.
There's the look.
Yeah.
And I think you have a look the other side too, don't you? And that's when you know you've won.
Yeah.
And you give him a great pat down the neck as you go past the line, don't you?
Yes.
Well, Walter, I have to say